Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. Special episode of the show today, coming to you from the Blue Wire Studios at the Wynn in Las Vegas. Always love it whenever we can get out here. Joining me in studio is Ron Gutterman. Ron, nice to be in person here with you, and thanks for joining me.
Yeah, of course. You know how much I love doing front office segments. This is great.
But get this, we don't just have Ron. No, the whole team is here. We also have Keith Smith coming in remote. Keith, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm just upset that you must not have hit it big because we're still recording today. So get after it, buddy. Come on, what are you doing? Let's go.
I'm working on it. What should I put my money on? Red or black? Let me know, Keith.
Black. Always bet on black. Wesley Snipes told you.
All right. I will see if we can get that done tonight. If there's no show tomorrow, then everybody knows exactly what happened. But speaking of shows, there was an amazing show in Las Vegas last night. Victor Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson put on one heck of a show. I guess first let's break into that. Keith, what did you think about that matchup, about what we saw? Like, expectations were high. Did they exceed them somehow?
Yeah, they blew way past them. I think we were all hoping it would go great, and it was unbelievable. The two guys played, outstanding basketball. Wembanyama, I think for a lot of people, this was their first chance to see him play that weren't, YouTube highlights or, snippets on Twitter and those kind of things. And he was, as promised, he hit a bunch of jump shots. I think he went 7 for 11 from behind the arc. I know he hit 7 threes. He had 5 blocks. That's only been done once in NBA history. To give you a sense of what kind of line he put together there, scored 37 points. His team was down big. He almost let them all the way back. And then Scoot Henderson put on a show too. 28 points for him. He drove at Wembanyama several times and finished. I liked the quote. I believe it was to Kevin O'Connor of The Ringer, where he said, "I want to dominate and demoralize my opponents," which I thought was phenomenal stuff. So yeah, I mean, these two kids put on a show, and I can't wait to continue to monitor them for the rest of the year.
I love that quote. I feel like he's like channeling Ivan Drago or something with that one.
Right.
Dominate and demoralized. Absolutely, that's fantastic stuff. Ron, what were your thoughts on the matchup there? And is this? I mean, are we looking at potentially generational talents? I know guys come into the NBA overhyped all the time. They don't always hit, but it felt like we were watching something special.
Yeah, Keith, it's interesting. You went with the dominate and demoralize quote. My favorite quote, I think Victor said something along the lines of, Scoot Henderson would be the number 1 pick if I was never born, which is like a phenomenal quote. So good for him. The two of them are absolutely incredible. And yes, it was, an exhibition game in Las Vegas. It's not like it's not league play for either of them. It's just kind of, a throwout game that was very, very fun. And I think, a lot of people are talking about like going down in history as one of the greatest exhibitions ever. But yeah, I think it's really cool to see two highly touted prospects get put on this big stage and deliver in the absolute best way. And they're both so young that like you would expect the pressure to get to, one or both of them in a moment like that. And they both exceeded the hype somehow. And by the way, the 7 3-pointers, 5 blocks, the only player in NBA history to do it, Danny Green.
Former Laker.
Shout out Danny Green for being just that guy. But yeah, it was a really like amazing game from both of them. And you have to be excited about like the future of NBA basketball if that's what it looks like. If it looks like those two guys who play completely different positions, play completely different, but still had this like incredible back and forth over the course of an entire game.
Oh, it was so great that if it's me, if I'm their agent, I'm not letting them play again. Just pull the plug right now because they're going to be the top picks in the draft. You're not going to exceed what we just, or at least I wouldn't think that you're able to. That was a perfect night for both of those players. Keith, what does this mean for the tank race? Let's talk about that. Across the NBA, what is now going to happen? Like, we may see incentive like perhaps never before for teams to bottom out and lose as much as possible. Do you think we're going to see teams actually making moves now to try to go get these guys because the hype is through the roof?
Yeah, I think so. So to the first thing you said about shutting him down, I don't know if you've seen it because I know you've been busy all
Yeah.
afternoon. But his agent, Wembanyama's agent, actually came out and said, "No, we will
Oh,
not shut him down. That he would not have that. He wants to play, and he would. I think he might even said something like he would have a new agent if I even suggested it. So yeah, so we're not going to see that. But I get where you're coming from, right? There's I don't know how much he really has to gain by playing this year. He's already going to be the number one pick, and because of that, it's if the lottery odds weren't flattened, I think you'd see a couple teams they'd start sitting guys in November and be like, nope, we win 7 games this year, we're fine. That's I think how good of a prospect this kid is, and then with the flattened lottery odds, all right, well, pretty good consolation prize to get Scoot Henderson if that's where you land instead. If you're at number 2, and then the rest of this draft class at the top is really really solid. You've got a bunch of kids who can really play in this draft class. You got the Thompson twins there. You got it feels like half of these guys are going to Arkansas in this case, but you've got those guys. You've got Nick Smith, you got Cameron Whitmore, Keontae George, Dylan Mitchell, Derek Lively. This is just a loaded draft class near the top, and really kind of probably all the way down 8, 9, 10. But it still says something how much these two guys are so far above everybody else in the draft class. Now you're going to hear people are going to try to convince, oh, this guy should be in there. This guy should be in the mix for, number 1 or maybe even top 2 or something like that. But I can't see, unless Wembanyama has an absolutely awful season in France, I can't see any way he's not the number 1 overall pick. And he's going to be coming in with the most hyped prospect since probably LeBron is my guess at this point.
yeah. I think fans of some of these tanking teams are going to be nervous every time their team wins a game. There's going to be some hand wringing over the course of the season. Ron, who do you think is the lead right now in the race to the bottom?
I would have to go with the Utah Jazz, although there are a lot of teams vying for it this year. I think it's going to be a fascinating tank race. But I would say the Utah Jazz currently are like the most unashamed leaders in the clubhouse in terms of the tank. I think, the way they traded Donovan Mitchell, they traded Rudy Gobert. The rumor out there is that they've, drawn the line at Jordan Clarkson, which is like kind of a weird line to draw. But like
I don't know, Jordan Clarkson might be a guy who might help you in a tank race.
That's true.
That's true. Give Jordan Clarkson 45 minutes and say just do whatever you want out there. That's probably not a winning formula.
That was wasn't it back in the day? I could be misremembering this, but the Minnesota Timberwolves, I think they needed to lose a game, and so then you wound up with Mark Madsen shooting threes.
Yes,
that's right.
A ton of threes. Yeah.
so yeah, I think.
Well, in the Celtics, the year they tried to tank. They unleashed Ricky Davis for a couple games, and we're like, just go nuts. It's all you tonight, Ricky Davis. And it did. Well, I guess it did the job. They lost the games. That's what the intentions were.
Yeah, I think it's going to get really sickening when Cody Zeller's pulling up for 4 threes a game for the Utah Jazz. I think we could see some pretty nasty stuff. But yeah, I think the Jazz are the leaders in the clubhouse there. The San Antonio Spurs, obviously, I think want to be up there as well. One team that may join that tank race is the Indiana Pacers. They have 2 main pieces in Miles Turner and Buddy Hield that have been in a lot of trade rumors. I think if they trade one or both of those guys, that would be their signal of like, all right, we're joining this thing. Like, we want to be there too. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I think teams like Houston, teams like Detroit, teams like Orlando they're building something, certainly. Like, you have to be happy with what their young core is. They may not be quite ready yet to be good enough to be out of that race. So they might just be there, even though you're very happy. If you're a fan of one of those teams, you're happy with the young core you have. They're just not quite ready to take that leap.
So they might get there, even though it's not necessarily intentional.
Yeah. That's
just kind of
Oklahoma City, of course.
Sure.
It's only a matter of time before they bench Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for the season.
Well, he's already benched.
Yeah, he's
ready. He's already out. So yeah, I mean they're definitely in that mix.
Yeah. So there are definitely 3 major teams. There could be reasonably 6 or 7 teams that might at some point this season just wave the white flag and say, let's do this thing. Let's get to the bottom 4.
What of the teams that are realistic possibilities, Keith? What's the most fun landing spot for Wembanyama?
Houston could be really fun. Put him out there with Green and Smith and Şengün and a couple of their other kids. Obviously, putting him and Chet on the same team would just be hilarious.
With
With Poku too.
Put him out there next to Paulo, right? That would be a lot of fun too. I think for me, I think San Antonio is clearly right now looks like the worst team in the league. Already starting without Keldon Johnson, starting without Josh Primo. Their coach even said, "I wouldn't bet money on us to win games." That says to me, I don't know that Utah. They're going to have to flip the switch towards being intentionally bad very quickly because they just have a lot of solid NBA guys who are they're gonna win you some games, and you may look, later on in the year, you may get to April and be like, man, what were we doing in October and November, right? Yeah, that was a mistake.
The Kelly Olynyk game here and there.
Exactly, right. Mike Conley's still a pretty good player. Yep. You still got, I know I picked on him a little bit, but Jordan Clarkson can still be a helpful player. Got Sexton, Markkanen, Jared Vanderbilt, who I know we're both fans of. So that's it's not. When you look at it, it's not one of those where you're like, oh, God. Now, it could turn into that very quickly. If they make a couple more trades, it might all, flip there. But, yeah, I think San Antonio, OKC, Houston, and Orlando, I agree with what Ron said. They're going to be just kind of naturally bad. I don't think they're going to be trying to be bad, at least early on. They're young teams. And then, Indiana, maybe Detroit if things aren't kind of going their way. And then there's going to be some team where we're not mentioning in this group where they're just gonna have that season where the wheels come off and they're gonna be really bad too. So it's gonna be really something. I think by the time we get to just before the trade deadline, you're gonna see some really egregious stuff, but it's gonna be balanced out by the fact that I think we have somewhere between 16 and 20 legitimately good playoff level teams right now, so that's going to balance it off a little bit. So they'll pick off those wins, and that's not the end of the world if that's the way it goes. But teams they're going to want to be in that bottom group with the flat odds. You want to have that 14% chance at getting that overall first pick.
That's one of the things that struck me about the NBA coming into this season is there's such a clear divide between the teams that are very obviously, and even if I don't want to use the word tanking, they're rebuilding, versus teams that are going for it and teams that are trying to win right now. You don't get very many teams these days, and maybe that just speaks to GMs getting a little bit more savvy with how they're building teams and roster construction and all of that. But you don't see many teams right now in the NBA that are stuck kind of in the middle where you aren't sure exactly what their direction is.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's a handful of those teams. You look at them, even if you're like for example, I'm not super high on the Chicago Bulls this year, but there's a world where the Bulls are a top 4 team in the East, right? It's very easily that could happen. They played like that for a lot of last season, so that could definitely happen. So I think we're just going to have to kind of naturally watch this thing evolve with some teams. Some of the teams we think will be good, we know they're not going to be. They're going to have injuries. Things just aren't going to come together quite right for them, whatever it is, and they're not going to be very good. But a lot of these other teams are going to be sitting there just kind of waiting to pick up the slack, behind them, which is interesting too. And you've got some teams that they're going to be motivated where making the play-in tournament is a real goal for them. Teams like Sacramento, I think New Orleans trying to push all the way through again and really be a solid playoff team. Minnesota, we know they don't want to go back to being a non-playoff team. I think Portland wants to get back there. And then in the East, you've got teams like the Knicks, the Wizards, the Hornets, that they might be kind of in the middle of the pack in the conference, somewhere in the 8 to 12 range, but they're not going to be bad teams. So, it'll naturally happen, but yeah, you're absolutely right, man. It is completely, split right now between teams that are going for the postseason and teams that are basically saying, yeah, it's over before we get there. But what I think is fun is the teams that are saying it's over before we even start, I think their fan bases are all like, yep, and that's how we want it. Lose a bunch of games and play the kids. That's where we want to be.
Yep, fans have also become savvy to this strategy. We heard in the past, like back in the Sam Hinkie days, like, oh, well, such and such fan base would never accept that. That is not the case anymore. Fans understand exactly what teams are going for, and they are on board with that. But Let's move it. This is going to be a topic the entire season. We're going to be looking at exactly what is happening in the tank race, particularly with these two players, Scoot Henderson, Victor Wembanyama, both looking so absolutely fantastic. It's going to be something we're going to discuss throughout the season. But we do have a few other news topics that we need to get into today. Ron, we've got the Bulls picking up their fourth-year player option for Patrick Williams. Is this just a no-brainer, kind of duh? They were definitely going to do this?
Yeah. I mean, he did not play a lot last season. He missed most of the season with injury. But when he has played, he is clearly an impact guy defensively. Picking up the fourth-year option is a no-brainer for most guys, that are high-level picks, and he showed himself to do that. So, I hope he can stay healthy this year. The Bulls are going to need all the help they can get defensively because we have no idea what the status of Lonzo Ball is. So, with some of the pieces they have on the offensive end that are elite, they need every piece they can get defensively, and Patrick Williams will be that piece for them.
Yeah, I think he's going to be really important for them this year. Keith, anything on that option being picked up? Again, I think no surprise there.
Yeah, absolutely no surprise. We knew it was coming. He is, worth every penny of the $9.8 million they'll pay him next season. Not this season that's starting right now. This is next year. These rookie scale options need to be picked up essentially a year in advance. No surprise there. And Ron's right. He's got to be one of kind of their key defenders, and that's what his rep coming in was, that he could defend 2 through 4. I think he's shown snippets of that in his first 2 years. Last year, unfortunate that he got hurt because he was really starting to shoot the ball pretty well too. If he can, just knock down open jumpers and play defense, they're going to be pretty well set with him at the forward spot there in Chicago.
Last thing that we've got for today, we've got a little bit of injury news here. Corey Kispert out 4 to 6 weeks with a sprained ankle, and Malachi Flynn out with a facial fracture. Ron, once again, we say it all the time, but the NBA did not turn off the injuries before they started the preseason. You got to do it before. You can't get into the season and then try to turn off injuries. You got to do it before. Obviously didn't happen, but this is tough when you're losing players in preseason, particularly when it's rotation guys. Teams then have to try to adapt on the fly.
Yeah, and I think the Wizards have had a bit of unfortunate luck. They've had a lot of lottery and first-round draft picks the past few years that have missed some time with injury. I feel like they're just kind of getting like bad luck here with their rookies and their young players. Kispert, Denny Avdia missed some time. Rui Hachimura's missed time. This keeps happening to them. I kind of want them to all be healthy at the same time to see if the Wizards drafted well. I still have no idea how well they drafted all these guys because I have not seen them consistently be a part of that rotation together.
We still don't even know exactly what Bradley Beal and Kristaps Porzingis are together.
That whole team.
We don't know.
That whole team is like that.
Keith, what do you think about these injuries? Unfortunate, but is this going to be a big deal for either the Raptors or the Wizards?
Yeah, I'm not worried about the Malachi Flynn one at all. It also sounds like he's just as soon as he has a comfort level with wearing a mask, he'll be back. And who knows how much he even will play for Toronto, to be quite honest. I think behind Fred VanVleet, they're going to give a lot of those minutes to Dylan O'Banton. This year, I think they really are looking for him to step up and take that backup point guard role. And we know they're perfectly content to run their offense through Pascal Siakam for much of the game, as well as I think Scotty Barnes is going to take on an increased playmaking role. Corey Kispert's a little more interesting. It's that 2 through 4 group in Washington's just so crowded. You've got a ton of guys that play those positions. So fighting for minutes was going to be tough, and now he's going to be a little bit behind the 8 ball. And he's a guy who could have really factored in for the Wizards just because he can shoot. That's a team that doesn't have a lot of shooting that you feel super confident in, and that's kind of Kispert's role, is to kind of be designated shooter. But he showed last year could do a little bit when he puts the ball on the floor and those kind of things. So he'll be a little bit behind to start the year, but hopefully he'll end up fine by the time it really matters to get in there. But that team's got some stuff to figure out. They're one of those teams, like I mentioned, they're kind of in the middle of the pack in the East, but on the lower end of the middle of the pack. Like they're really not a threat to be a top 6, but could make the play in if things go well for them. And hey, contract year Kristaps Porzingis maybe, but you gotta have their guys stay healthy.
Yeah, look, they started off hot last year. It looked pretty good. And then obviously that faded as the year went on and the injuries really started to accumulate for the Wizards. So they'll be a team to watch. Be interesting to see exactly how things look once they get everybody healthy. Fingers crossed that they can get them all healthy at the same time. But that's going to do it for us today on the NBA Front Office Show. Make sure you do subscribe over on the YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our Clips channel as well. We'll put the link in the description. Thank you, Keith and Ron. Thanks for joining me here today. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.